It's Jack Osbourne, and you're watching Heavy Consequence on Consequence of Sound.
Before we get into the documentary, I wanted to see, how you and the family, one, have been coping with the pandemic, and obviously the latest on Ozzy's health. All of us metal fans were concerned the last couple of years with a few setbacks, and just wanted to see how he's doing.
Yeah, he's doing good. We're actually I'm on vacation with them right now, so we're up in Santa Barbara. He's in the pool, so it's he's doing much better. It's been a slow progress, but progress nonetheless.
Great. That's good to hear. So like I mentioned, I watched the documentary, The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne, and I thought it was done really well. And I think it gave a nice glimpse of, his life from childhood to the present day, but, it didn't skip over some real dark times either. And I think it was nice for both, like the diehard Ozzy metal fan and the casual fan. I think it had a nice balance. And, from the beginning, you learn a lot about Ozzy as a child, that he had this anxiety. He was a little bit of a nervous kid. He was always concerned about the well-being of his parents. And I wanted to know, you as his son, how much did you learn, during the process of, making the film and the film's editing and seeing the final cut? Was there stuff that was new to you about your father and his childhood?
I think for me, when I did, because about 10 years ago we did God Bless Ozzy, another documentary, and I think during the making of that is when I really was I found stuff in boxes and old letters that he'd written and telegrams from my mom's father to my dad, and just that was when I kind of had the whoa, look at all this stuff. So it was, I think it almost benefited knowing about most of it going into it, because it gave a better lay of the land, of where stuff is and what stuff we did have and didn't have. Really creatively, this documentary was very much Greg Johnston's vision, our director. And we really just kind of said there's no parameters, and just have at it, make a documentary that you would want to watch. And we've worked with Greg and since the Osbournes. He was one of the executive producers on the Osbournes, so he's probably filmed my dad and been involved in filming my dad more than anyone on earth between the Osbournes, and then he did World Detour and now this. So we really just entrusted him.
And I really like that Randy Rhoads got a lot of attention in this film. They didn't just skip over it. They gave him he almost had a mini documentary within the bigger documentary.
For sure.
I think that's a telltale sign of how much Randy meant to Ozzy and his career. If you can talk about just that, putting that focus on Randy and really what he meant to and what he meant to your dad.
Yeah, I think it was they talk about it in the film. It was Randy was my dad's partner. He was, he helped my dad very much find himself as a solo artist, and it was a very kind of unique relationship. They inspired each other. They were each other's best friends, and they toured together. And when you're touring with someone, you eat, sleep, live, you're all, it's like being on a submarine. And that loss, I don't think has ever really been has been replaced by any sense of the word. It was a really it's funny, I was online the other day going down a YouTube hole, and it suggested, oh, why don't you watch this? And it was from when me and my dad went to Iron Island. Sorry, not Iron Island. Iron Mountain, the vault place where they keep all the masters, and they found the original masters of Crazy Train in there, and all the raw tape. And it was my dad in the studio with Randy, and and it playing that and you see my dad's reaction, it just like it still crushes him to this day.
Yeah. And I thought one of the lighter moments in the movie was Kelly talking about the time you had a bunch of kids over in the playhouse and Ozzy had his like Bark at the Moon mask on and just like scared the living
Yep.
daylights out of them. But like the three of you weren't so scared, but the other kids were just like screaming. And it just got me to wondering, like, were there just a lot of moments like that with your dad? Just like these goofy, silly.
Oh, absolutely. There was always these like really goofy, funny moments because my dad just loves to joke around. I mean, even on holiday and it's anytime, any opportunity to have a laugh, he will. And he, yeah, I mean, it was, but there was good times and there were bad with the jokes. One bad time was a Halloween party we had, and he decided to get obliteratingly drunk and then came down and started singing Backstreet Boys in like an old suit. And it was just like, what in the fuck?
Oh, that's hilarious. Like I'm trying to picture that in my mind, but that's
Oh man, it was, yeah, I wish I didn't have that in my mind, but
that's great.
no, it was there was always moments of that, and he loves a good practical joke.
Yeah. And I thought on the opposite end, the most sinister part, obviously it deals a lot with, Ozzy's addiction and drug use and drinking. But I thought the most sinister moment was obviously talking about the attempted murder on your mom.
Yeah.
And I thought the reason why it was so kind of sinister was the way your mom, Sharon, was talking about it. She's usually so boisterous and animated. But in that film, she's so reserved and calm when she's talking about that. And you can tell, how serious that was, for her and the family. Was that a difficult topic to revisit? And is it difficult for you as their child to watch?
It's funny. It's like when you look at it from like a producer standpoint, you're like, oh my God, this is great. We got this on camera. But then when you go, oh, but wait, that's my parents. That's my, that's my mom and my dad talking about this horrible thing. So you have to kind of, I think I had a tendency to try and remove myself from it and just focus on the content in which we were working with, because it's when you do look at it from a more human side, like, oh wait, that's messed up that happened.
Yeah. And moving on in the film, they talk about how, obviously he did the No More tours and then took time off, and they talked about it was interesting how like, he kind of got pitched to Lollapalooza and got rejected, wasn't like hipster enough, and from there, Ozzfest formed, and obviously that was a huge success. And as I understand it, maybe not, I don't know how old you were when it first started, but I know that you started to have a hand in some of the bands.
A little bit, for sure.
Can you talk about, what Ozzfest meant for Ozzy's career, and even your involvement and your mom's involvement, and how important that was to the kind of the metal world? Because you remember the 90s were kind of a tough time for metal too, those mid 90s, those early to mid 90s until that resurgence. And if you can talk about the importance about it.
I mean, with Ozzfest, it's like I always, say to my mom, I always look at Ozzfest like her crowning achievement. It's like she helped seed and and grow dozens of very successful bands that are still successful today. And it was all, Ozzfest was that kind of launch pad. And, although it was birthed out of resentment of like, hey, Lollapalooza, I think it was, I don't know. I look back at Ozzfest and it's such, that was my summer camp. That was, we'd get done with school and we'd go out on the road all summer. And, so I think, and as far as my involvement, it was very much like, I would suggest bands or, people from my mom's office to be like, hey, what do you think of these guys? And, I was more of like a sounding board for some of the decision making.
But you hear a lot of these bands who are now been around for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
A lot of them credit Ozzfest, like bands like Disturbed and other bands like that, where like that was our launching pad. You know, we went from the side stage of Ozzfest to the main stage the next year, and then from there we got our fan base. So, you know, I've interviewed all these bands. I've been a music journalist for a long time, and you'd be surprised at how many just point back to Ozzfest as saying,
yeah,
it's the launching pad for their career. So.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly, like there are sometimes we'll have conversations, and it's like, I mean, the bands that came through that are just, it's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, and they're still going. And obviously after that became the Osbournes TV show on MTV, and kind of just family to the mainstream. And you know, everyone knows about the show, but I wanted to know, like, for you and Kelly at your age, was it particularly difficult, you know, being in the public eye, you know, especially off camera during those years, your formative years, you're growing, you're teenagers and stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what we were doing. It was an experiment that MTV was willing to pay for. Yeah. And it turned into this giant thing. And so none of us were like mentally or emotionally prepared for what we were going to embark in. Like today, if you were, you know, the Smith family doing a reality show, like there's a formula to follow, and there's like a trajectory that you can try and emulate or strive to beat. But back then it was like, all right, we'll see what happens. And I think it really took us all up by surprise. We had no idea what the show was going to be. And, you know, it was difficult. Like I didn't, you know, I never wanted to be, you know, I didn't really want to be famous when I was a kid. You know, I wanted to work in the record industry and kind of was either going to work in the record industry or go into the army. And that was like that was my thing. And so it definitely kind of 180'd my life. And I think ultimately in a good way. You know, I've had a great career. Yeah. So, you know, but it was very difficult as a teenager because, I mean, 15 to 19 are not flattering ages for anyone.
Yeah.
You're not full of an abundance of confidence in that time period.
It's tough enough just being behind closed doors with your own family, but being on an international TV show makes it even tougher, for sure.
Oh God, yeah.
I also like the documentary. You know, you had these guests like the speakers like Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie and Jonathan Davis from Korn, but for most of it, they were relegated to the beginning and the end of the film, and they really just let the family tell the story. I feel like that was like a conscious decision by the directors to kind of.
I think it was, for sure. It was like, you know, we can have these people kind of weigh in on very much the public persona and the, you know, and the influence, but the real core of, you know, who this person is should be told by the ones that know him the best.
Yeah.
And I think that was really, you know, Greg, our director, it was really his, I think it was certainly deliberate.
Yeah. And at the end of the film, there's a very poignant time when you kind of tear up and you're talking about your daughter, like performing Crazy Train in a school play. And I actually got I have a 5-year-old girl, and she saw the Trolls World Tour movie, and she's been in Crazy Trains in the movie. You know, Ozzy did a voice, and she's been singing that song every day.
Which he hates. By the way, which he hates. When he saw Trolls, he was like, I'm in a fucking wheelchair. He's like, come on, that's bullshit.
I thought that was kind of odd. I was like, go ahead.
The funny thing is, I didn't know he'd done the Trolls. I didn't know he'd done it, and it was on TV. Like, you know, when quarantine started, and I was like, hey kids, let's watch this. You'll like this film. And I put it on for them, and I was like, what the fuck?
But for my daughter,
and like my youngest was like, you know, my youngest kept, when she could hear his voice, and she was just like, Papa? Like so confused that like he's in this cartoon.
But for my daughter, it's like it's kind of like her introduction to metal. Like she sings. I mean, I was trying to get her to listen to songs before that because, you know, I'm a metalhead myself. But like she that was the way to get her in. And then she started asking.
Totally.
And I like, who sings that in real life? I'm like, oh, it's this guy named Ozzy Osbourne. He helped invent heavy metal. Like, I'm started telling the story. He was in this
This
band,
tale.
Black Sabbath, and they released the first heavy metal album 50 years ago. And she started asking me more and more questions. So when you started talking about that and started to tear up and talking about your daughter, that got to me too. And if you can just talk briefly about like Ozzy.
Yeah, you know, it kind of like oddly hit me because it's like, I don't know, you grow up with this person who's your dad, and you know, I've seen Crazy Train performed a billion times, and I just never thought it would ever be a reality in which my daughter's first grade class would be performing his song. And you know, especially too because it's like my dad was never super mainstream. It's not like he was, you know, Sting, and like everyone loves Sting.
I wanted to also talk. I mean, you have the cool thing is like we have this pandemic, but you guys have a million things going on, and the documentary is one, and it's great. I saw it, and definitely everyone should check it out when it premieres on A&E. And but recently there was news that a biopic is in the works, and your mom Sharon said she doesn't want it to be like a glossy Bohemian Rhapsody thing. She wants it to be gritty, dirty, and like not gloss over anything. Can you talk just a little? I know it's in the infant stages, but can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I can't say too much about it because I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But it very much is in active development, and we are striving to make it just gritty, real. I mean, I think the documentary will give a good sense of the kind of areas that we're gonna visit. We're still trying to narrow down the time period, and trying to fit it all into one feature length film is going to be very hard. But we're certainly going to do our best to do it justice. It's funny. I was saying, like, when you look at what happened from 1979 to 1983, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
You're just like, how do you fit it all? I mean, because you got getting fired from Sabbath, meeting Randy, and doing Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman. You got the dove biting, you got the bat biting, you got the Alamo, you've got Randy's passing, then you've got my mom and dad getting married, and my sister being born. Like that all happened in a 4-year period.
Yeah. And it was mentioned that the focus of the biopic was going to be more on Ozzy and Sharon's relationship, more so than a whole chronicling of his career.
Yeah, it's gonna be a snapshot of probably of a 15-year window.
I thought that video for when I was mentioned that video for Under the Graveyard, which had I think Jack Kilmer playing Ozzy and Jessica Barden playing Sharon. I thought of that video. That could maybe that offers a little glimpse of what we can expect in the biopic.
Yeah, I think there was that certainly that definitely was a deliberate kind of I think wink to a degree.
Very cool. And obviously you also have the Osbournes Want to Believe on the Travel Channel, a paranormal series. Like, can you talk about how, I mean, I'm assuming that's mostly your idea. Can you talk about how that came together?
Yeah, I mean, it really came to be because, I mean, let's be honest, quarantine networks are like, we need stuff to put on. We've run out of new material. And I work with Travel Channel. I have another show with them, and we were just kind of spitballing, and they were like, what if we paired your parents? What if we got your parents and you try to convince them that this stuff's real because they don't really believe in it? And I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And yeah, the show's doing phenomenally well for them, and I'm really excited and happy. And yeah, it's actually a lot of fun. And even my dad was like, he's like, I'll do this all day. This is a great way to spend a few hours.
That's awesome. And then recently there was a report Ozzy's already working on a follow-up to Ordinary Man.
Yes.
In the studio. The guy just can't be stopped. Anything you can tell us on that progress?
I think it's I actually don't know where they're at. I mean, I know Andrew, his producer, unfortunately had, he got COVID early on in March, and it really knocked him for 6. So he's kind of getting back on his feet. And I think, you know, I think probably in the fall is when they're really going to start getting in the studio more, and, you know, and getting really, you know, rolling their sleeves up with it. It's just been kind of like loose right now.
And obviously people want to see, you know, Ozzy had to cancel a number of tour dates. He actually had to cancel before the pandemic. As it turns out,
I know.
they would have been
He
canceled anyway.
he shouldn't have said anything. He should have been like, yep.
Yeah, if he would have waited, I think, in maybe 3 more weeks or so, the whole industry shut down. But I saw him on that first leg of that farewell tour. People forget that he had already started that No More Tours too, and I saw him at Bones Beach.
Okay.
It's 2 summers ago when it first started, summer 2018, and he sounded amazing. The band was great with Zach and Blasco, and like I was like, these are some of Ozzy's greatest shows ever. And like obviously, you know, he got hit with the thing in the fall of that year or something, and then he had the fall, then he fell down, and so I just don't know, like, from your personal perspective, obviously you can't predict the future, but if for fans who really want to know, could they look forward to seeing Ozzy on stage again, you know, whether even on a full tour?
I think he is determined to get back out on the road. It's just a matter of, you know, healing and when he'll be allowed to. I mean, it's kind of a bit of a godsend for, I guess, for him personally, that, you know, there's no pressure to get back out on the road because you can't. And so it's like, all right, I can recover on my own timeline, which is great. And yeah, he's, you know, I know he is determined to get back out on the road.